No, yes. No, so you are able to see the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
So anyway, so last week, we have closed our beams, and the tutorial was also, circulated to all of you, and you would have solved the problems itself. Okay. Now we will move to the next one. That is the, the important thing. That is the plate girders. They are widely used in bridges, and then, you would have seen at the many, the places itself. Okay. Railway bridges, road bridges. How do we do the design? Okay. So this is how the plate girders looks like. Okay, you would have already seen, right? Railway, when to cross a river or in a fly, many places, like you will see this plate girder. You can see here also. Okay, so here also, this is a plate girder. This is a plate girder. Some four girders are there. You can see. So this is what we call as a plate girder. So plate girder is same as your beam itself, but we will define what why we call this as a plate girder, and why don't we call this as a beam itself. Okay, it is more or less like I section only. Okay, this one. So now, so this is how you see they manufacture in the factories actual. Okay, this is a plate girder, so they see generally the, why do we see, like you see in our IS steel tables, say we have standard sections are the ISLB, ISWB 600 and other things also. Okay, so why do we go for this plate girders, say? Okay, that's a very important thing. So anyway, just to see this one. So how they manufacture. So what they do in field is, they collect these steel plates, say. Okay, the steel plates are flats. Okay, so which are already given this one. So what they do is, they take these steel plates, they make their own, the I section itself. So it is a plate girder is something like, you can also say as a built up, the sections itself. So you can see how massive, this plate girder is. You can see in this figure also, like you can see how they do all this, how they manufacture this one. So you take these three steel plates, say, you do the welding. Okay, so here, so automatically, you will get your own I section, which has a very huge depth, and that itself we call as a plate girder actual. So you can see these also plate girders, they transport in, because they are very huge, say, transportation also is becomes very important, and then, so that is how we say they carry it also. Okay, so this is also, you can see a huge, the plate girder. See, one is here, two, then three, four, five. It looks like a beam only, but you can see, you can compare the size of your, the person, and with this depth, say, you can see that, the depth of the web or whatever you are having here, or this depth here itself of this I section. So you can see all are I sections only. Okay, so if you can web depth, and if you compare this one, say, so this web depth will be, extremely high when you compare with the standard, you see, I sections. So this I already showed you in the beam. When do we require this plate girders? No. So all of you remember, right? So when the span, when you are having long spans, say, okay, with very heavy loads, and the span is also 10 to 100 meters, say. So we go for this plate girder. Okay, so plate girder is also like I section only. There is no difference, this itself. Now, can anybody say why do we require this plate girder? You can go for I beam, right? What is the advantage of I sections? What is the advantage of I sections in beams? Why do we use I sections in beams? Why don't we, why we don't use that angle or some other sections? I sections are widely preferred for beams. What is the reason?
They are symmetric.
Symmetric is fine, but what is the speciality of I section? Now, why do we use it as a beam?
Mass is furthest away from the center of mass.
Excellent. So mass is far away. So what happens when mass is far away from the, the center? This one.
Much
So
larger
when the
section modulus over mass.
larger section model. Excellent. Okay, that means moment of inertia will be more, because A into R square, right? So area is far away, so you will have more lever arm you followed, right? More section modulus and other things are there. Now, if you want to increase the section modulus, say, what is that you have to do? Our moment of inertia, anyway, section modulus is I by, that Y itself, and bending capacity, say, is F times, Z itself we have. So if you want to increase the capacity of your, the beam to carry more load or more bending moments, so the only way is you have to increase the section modulus. So if you want to increase the section modulus, what is that you have to do?
for I-beam, increase the depth.
Increase the depth itself. Excellent. So that means it increases the lever arm. You followed, right? So automatically, if the lever arm increases, say, so automatically, see, like for example, if I have a area, so I want to keep area constant. Okay, so now you can do, so if I make like this one, say, so like you see, so I can make I section like this also, or I can make I section, like this also. You followed, right? Now, which one will have more section modulus? The first
Deeper
one or the second? No. So this is the second one actual. So this will have more section, the modulus here, here itself. So now the standard, whatever in the steel tables, ISMB, ISLB, they can go up to 600 meter depth or whatever you have. Now, if you want to increase the section modulus, say, so the idea here for plate girder comes is, don't use any rolled I sections or something which are expensive, which are more weight also increases, as the depth increases. So the idea here is you take some steel plates, say. Okay, so you make your own, I section. So you take some steel plates. Let us say its area is some AC of all these steel plate sections. You do your own, build up your own thing, something like this. So you increase the depth. You can go increase the depth itself, and your mass is proportionated. You see, more mass is located at far away from the epicenter or whatever this, the centroid or something, such that its section modulus will be extremely high itself. Actually, now not only the section modulus, because when the depth is increasing, say, the shear also increases. Okay, the shear capacity also, because the area of the web also you follow, right? It increases the shear capacity, bending capacity, say, you can increase by doing these type of the things. So don't go for I sections, the classical thing which are given in the steel table. So you go for the steel plates, you make your own the girder, and then you can decide your own plastic section modulus. You can do all these things also. Okay, so this is the idea. So the plate girder is same as beam, but we don't use the standard steel tables, ISLB, ISMB. We don't use them. We use only steel plates. Say, make our own cross section. The idea here is you should be able to get given an area, say, the maximum section modulus actual. Okay, that is the concept in this plate girders actual. Okay, and of course the economy also is very important. So if you take a plastic section modulus like 3500 or whatever, you select from steel tables and you take from steel plates and you draft your own I section, say. So our plate girder will have, you followed, right, less weight compared to the classical I section. So the economy point of view also, we will be able to achieve all these our objective itself. So that is the concept behind the plate girder. Okay, so this is how the plate girder looks like. So you take 3 plates, one is a flange plate. This is also a flange plate and 3 plates. Okay, and you have this web plates. So you just join them by welding and other things. In olden days, because welding was not there, so people used to do this bolting. Now also people are using. So bolting things are little complex. Okay, so if you want to join this plate to this plate, say, you have to go for the angle section, and then you see you have to do this all kinds of bolting and other things have to be done itself. But right now, everybody is going for the welded plate girders because they're very easy. Many places say they go for this welding itself. Now here the idea is also like this. So this is my I section. Okay, for my plate girder. So D is the depth of the web. D1 is the total depth, say, that is from this, not total, the effective depth. You can say that there is a centroid here to the flange of this one, and the thickness is this one, say. So now the bending moment basically. Okay, so the whatever bending moment you are having, two things. One is a bending moment, then other one is the shear force. Okay, so now the assumption in plate girder, of course the whole I section will carry the bending moment. Okay, but what we try to do is in the plate girder, say, so the design philosophy is the flanges, that is the flanges whatever you are having, the flanges will only resist the movement basically. That is an assumption. Okay, so the flanges, say, they resist the bending moment which is coming on the beam, and the shear force, it is resisted by the web. Okay, in reality, of course, both of them will be there, but this is the assumption which we do in the plate girders. So plate girder means bending moment, say, the flanges carry bending moment, and the shear, say, is completely carried by the web itself. That is also a concept in our the plate girder. So you can see, so the one concept is why we are going for plate girder is we want to increase the section modulus. So you are increasing the depth. So for a given area, say, you proportion the area such that your section modulus will be maximum. Okay, so given area, so area is given to you. Okay, so now you have to increase the section modulus. So which is in your hand. Okay, so now you proportion you followed, right? How much area should be in the flange, how much area should be in the web, and you have to design like is what should be the depth and thickness such that my section modulus will be maximum. If section modulus is maximum, say obviously my bending capacity will increase actually. So that is the concept here. And if the area is the same, so this is also economy is taken by this area. If area is more means weight will be more, so weight will be more means you followed, right? The cost also will be more itself. So the concept of plate girder is given area, so now you have to increase the section modulus. So you have an option, you have area of the flange, area of the web set, that is in your hand. You decide such that my bending capacity will be more actually. That is the first objective. The second one is, you see, the assumption here is the bending moment is carried by the flanges and the shear force is carried by the web. Of course, in reality, both of them will be there, but the assumption is for beams, say like whatever we have said, right? So generally, you see, we both of them will take care, but in the plate girder, say, so this is our assumption. Okay. Now here also you have to define and understand what is the difference between a beam and plate girder. This is also very important. Both are same on lie sections. What is the difference between the beam and plate girder? So code clearly specifies what is a beam, what is a plate girder. So this is our 6 to 7. You followed, right? So if the depth to thickness of the web, say if it is less than 67, okay, so the member can be classified as a beam actually. Okay, and the respective clauses applicable to beams are used. So this is what we call as a beam. Okay, no need to do any plate girder. If suppose in the question, say if they ask you design a plate girder for this load and something, and let us say you have selected D and TW is less than 67, say no need to do this plate girder business. Okay, suppose if D by TW, say if it is more than 67, okay, then you followed it, the plate girder automatically gets invoked. Okay, so this is the definition of the beam and plate girder as per the IS code. This is a very important thing which all of you should remember actually. Okay, so the 67 is the one, less than means it is a beam. If it is more than, say it is a plate girder actually. So what did we say in our beams? What happens when D by TW is more than 67? What did we say in the beams? No.
We should check for web buckling.
Web buckling, but in web you are having two times of the web buckles, like that bearing this one, but what is that buckling? Yeah, web buckling one, but what type of it is?
Shear buckling.
Yeah, excellent, shear buckling actually. Okay, so anyway, so shear buckling, so in plate girders, so since a D by TW is more than 67, say code says it is a plate girder, so that means what is a buckler? So it will fail under what type of criteria? What is the most important buckling criteria now? So if D by T is more than 67, so it is becoming a plate girder. That is perfectly fine. So how web will buckle here?
Shear.
No, it is a shear. So shear buckling becomes very important in the plate girder. You remember? So when we discussed about beams, we said, you see, when D by T is less than 67, so obviously for beams it will be less than 67. No need to check that clause itself like that. You see, I used to mention. But when D by T is more than 67, say, then shear becomes important. But code also says it becomes a plate girder. No more it is a beam. Okay, so this shear buckling becomes very important. So shear buckling of the web. Okay, so this is the most important clause given in the IS code. Okay, which all of you should remember. Now, so this is what the buckling, here what happens. So this is a shear buckling, say that is a pure shear basically. So we have a web, say, so this is basically web or whatever. So because you are using plates, okay, so the steel plates. So we have a plate, which is subjected to pure shear, okay, tau CR kind of a thing. And now how it buckles due to shear? Whether buckling can happen due to shear stress.
Yes, sir, at 45 degrees.
Yeah, excellent. So whether it is a pure shear, say. So when you take 45 degrees angle, okay, all of one diagonal will be under the tension, another diagonal will be under compression basically. So you will see this diagonal buckling. Okay, so this is so shear also can cause buckling. pure shear essentially. See, generally, you know, we would have studied, like you see, in columns and beams or however say. So which one causes buckling means a compression load actually. So here also compression only will cause buckling only. But when it is a pure shear case, say, it will, you have to look at the diagonals, because you know, if you draw the Mohr circle you followed, right? So the diagonals will have you know, the more you see the compression tension kind of. So this is a Mohr circle for pure shear. So one will be tension, other one will be, you know, the compression. So Mohr circle 90 means reality it is a half actually. So 45 degrees will be there. So you have to look at the diagonal. So diagonal buckling can happen. So for plate girders, say, because our D by, you know, TW, okay, if it is since it is, you know, more than you know, the 67. So if it is more than 67, so the plate girders, the major problem is this diagonal buckling itself. Okay. So generally, so now, as already I told you, what is the basic philosophy behind the plate girder? So for a given area, we are increasing the section modulus. So obviously, you see, your because the lever arm and other things are very important for you, say. So your plate girder will be more or less, you see, like this only. Okay. So depth will be more. You have seen those figures also, right? If you see these figures, say. Now, see here also you can see the plate girder here. So the depth is very, very large actually compared to the flanges or something like that, or this also, or anyway, you can see this one. So what is the major problem in this plate girder? So when the depth is very, very long, say, so when your I section is like this, what happens? The most important web is
shear buckling.
Shear buckling will be there. So web is very, very thin kind of thing here itself. Okay. So web is you know, thin. So because your D by TW is more than 67, so the depth of the web will be more than 67 times, you know, TW. So which means, you see, your web will be very, very thin or slender. You know, it is possible actually. Okay. And now so buckling becomes a big issue. Okay. Now, how do you arrest this buckling? So how to arrest this buckling in practice? So what is
stiffener?
You add a stiffener. So what is the basic philosophy behind this stiffener? So like, for example, if I have a column set, okay, if I have a column, how it will buckle? You all of you know, right? The column will buckle. You see, like this actually, it will buckle in the first mode. Like you see, pi square A by L square or whatever you have actual. Now suppose if I put a restraint here, say, then how it will buckle? If I put a restraint here, so how it will buckle the same column at the middle?
L by 2.
It will buckle in which mode?
Second mode.
Second mode. So second mode will be, you see, you remember, right? So second mode will be, you followed, no? So second mode will be, you see, something like this actual. Now what is the buckling load required to buckle under second mode? PCR2 second mode, say. PCR1, let us say it is a pi square A by L square, say. PCR2 will be
4 times.
4 times. That means the buckling capacity has increased actually if you put a restraint. Suppose if I put another restraint here, then another restraint here, say, how it will buckle? See, it will buckle, you followed, right? So something, you know, like this actual. The higher modes comes into picture actual. So if you are having a column, say, you want to increase its buckling load capacity. Okay. So what is that you can do? The supports you cannot change. The supports are all, you know, like you can't do anything with the supports. So if you want to increase the buckling capacities of a column or whatever actual. Okay. So what is the easiest way to do? What is the basic philosophy here?
Change the mode of buckling.
Change the mode of buckling. So if you want to change the mode of buckling means you have to put some kind of a restraints actually. Okay. So when you have put restraints, say, it is no more single column. It is basically 1 column, 2 column, 3 column, 4 columns. So you have split into 4 columns basically. So fourth mode will come. Obviously, its capacity will increase actually. So the same concept is used in the you know, this plate girders also. So because the web is very, very slender, you know, the web, say. So if you want to, you know, increase its buckling capacity, the one thing is you increase the thickness of the web actually. Okay, so in the D by TW, so if you increase the thickness of the web, automatically your slenderness ratio comes down and it will buckle, it will go in yielding, not by this one. But what happens if I increase the thickness? If I increase the thickness, what happens? The web becomes more, stocky kind of thing. What is the disadvantage here?
Economical.
It is uneconomical because the weight will increase, and that means more area is in the web rather than in the flanges actually. So then obviously the whole purpose of plate girder gets defeated, because we want more area far away from the web, such that far away from the centroid, such that bending capacity will be more. So this becomes uneconomical. So the easiest way to do this is you add a stiffeners here actually. You followed the stiffeners we add. So you see, so here you can see this whole, how many stiffeners are there? So 1, 2, 3, 4, you see 5, 6 stiffeners are there. If 6 stiffeners were not there, say, the plate would have buckled in the first mode like this actually. But now since you have added all the stiffeners, say, then obviously, it has to buckle in, you see, the higher modes or something. So obviously, its strength also, increases. That is the concept. So sometimes people do this transverse stiffeners. Then you can also put longitudinal stiffener also. See now in this, this is a UD, this is a plate girder. UDL is acting on the plate girder. Say now this here, where is the the longitudinal stiffener is at which place? Now, can anybody tell me where the longitudinal stiffener is located? See, neutral axis will be somewhere here because it is I section. Say. Where is the longitudinal stiffener? It is near the neutral axis or where it is?
Compression.
See why? It is no, it is not located at the neutral axis, right? See, now you remember lateral torsional buckling. Now what happens lateral torsional buckling? Now, so this is also IB subjected to EDL. What happens? So your top fibers will be
Compression.
Compression. Then so which one will buckle?
Oh, upper half of the flange.
This will buckle actually. So the top fibers will buckle, the compression portion will buckle. So if you want to arrest this lateral torsional buckling, say, where is that you have to put a stiffener? You have to put stiffener in the, so here you have to put a stiffener actually, followed. So if you don't, neutral axis, there is no point because at the neutral axis, what is the stress? Shear, of course, that is shear buckling is a different issue. I am talking about just the lateral torsional buckling. Okay, shear buckling is different. That is for the web. If you want to arrest lateral torsional bucklings or the flange buckling or whatever, web is a different issue. Okay, so here what you have to do is, you have to put a stiffener, longitudinal stiffener somewhere in the compression portion of the flange actually, because that is a place where there is a chance of LTB. Okay, so anyway, neutral axis is, and now will you put this stiffener in the tension flange? Is it required? In the tension flange, can I put a stiffener for LTB?
No, not required.
Not required because there is no chance of buckling. So buckling happens only in the top flange. So obviously you followed it. You have to put this stiffener here actually. Okay. So what the people do in practice for plate girders, you can have lateral torsional buckling, you can have web buckling, you can have shear buckling, bearing, web crippling, all kinds of problems are there. So we put stiffeners actually. So these horizontal stiffeners are provided for LTB and they are put only in the compression portion only. Suppose how do you, if you want to remove lateral torsional buckling, say, if you want to avoid, what is the easiest way? Now in beams, what did we tell? See, like here, if you see this figure, say, whether lateral torsional buckling is important here for these girders. These are all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 girders are there. So this is one plate girder. Now what is that they have done here? For lateral torsional buckling to arrest, what is that they have done?
Horizontal support.
That is, you see here, they have put all the restraints, laterally supported they have done. So here, do you think lateral torsional buckling will occur?
No.
No, so there is no chance of lateral torsional buckling. And now, so that is how we arrest. So now here you can see, now here this plate girder, say, what type of stiffeners are there here?
Vertical stiff.
Vertical. So vertical means they will handle only web buckling, shear buckling or whatever, say. This is a vertical stiffener. Do you have any horizontal stiffener here?
No.
So if you don't have horizontal stiffener, say, then it will fail under which section? There LTB becomes very important actually. Okay, so generally sometimes of course that manufacturing they would have done for some purpose, so we use this the stiffener. So horizontal means LTB, lateral the lateral torsion buckling means this the horizontal stiffener. So these are used for web buckling. The shear and other things becomes important. Okay, so the concept of plate girder is very simple. So the first philosophy is I want to increase my section modulus, okay, for a given area. Okay, so now you put, like you see, make the web thin. So this is a concept. Area is far away from the flange, from the the centroid or something. So bending capacity increases, and then buckling becomes a very serious problem actually. So to avoid this buckling, say we provide stiffeners. You follow. So that is a basic concept behind this plate girders. Okay, so stiffeners are used to arrest this buckling. And what does a stiffener does? What it's trying to change to your buckling load? What it is doing to try to do your buckling load? So what is the main job of a stiffener? If you don't provide stiffener, say your whole thing will buckle in which mode?
First mode.
First mode. So what's if you provide stiffeners? Say if you provide one stiffener, say your buckling load will be mode 2. If you provide more number of stiffeners, say your higher mode buckling happens. Obviously, the strength increases. So that is the concept. Okay. So for given area, increase the section modulus. Then web has to be thin. Then if web is thin, obviously buckling happens. So you can have all kinds of buckling, lateral torsion, web shear buckling, web buckling, all kinds of things will happen. So that you try to handle with some kind of a stiffener. So what stiffener does is, you go to higher modes, you obviously your buckling load will be, it will increase. And that is a concept. Okay. So generally, you see, we do a lot of things. Like you see, there are some words are there, like the stiffeners say, which are at the end here actually. So this and this, sometimes we call this as the end panel or the end stiffener or whatever you see. We call this one, and these are all intermediate stiffeners actually. Okay. So intermediate stiffeners, and sometimes the stiffener directly the load may be above the stiffener itself, the concentrated load. So right, whenever there is a concentrated load, say what happens below in the beams we have seen, right? What happens? What happens to the web? Web can
cripple.
Web crippling also happens. Web buckling also will happen. You remember under the loads you followed. Shear buckling is different. There in beams, what we said was whenever there is a load, say, so your web can buckle or web can cripple. Web will buckle at which place?
Midpoint.
Midpoint. You remember 45 degrees angle we use that bearing and others. But crippling we used to take at the junction actually near the flange and the web. So here also in plate girder. So these type of stiffeners say. So we call like it's intermediate bearing stiffener, load carrying stiffener also. These words are used here. And these are all. So these stiffeners, there is no load acting on the top of on the flange or whatever. So these stiffeners are provided for shear buckling. That is how the designs you followed, right? They do. Okay, and the end ones say, so this is more complicated because you will have a shear force and the support reaction, all other things will come. So this is the end stiffener, or sometimes the end post also. I think the one word is used, post or something also. They use the end things, intermediate. Then so the design of this is different. So design will be simply shear. This may be you may have to include all these criteria also. Here also you may have to do some extra things, checks you have to do for this stiffness. So in this is how this is a welded plate girder. Okay, so this is how people use this one. Okay, so you have this one. In previously you can also do by bolting, but bolting becomes complex. Like say if you want to join 3 plates, say you have to take angle, you do bolting here, you follow, right? So these, if you want to do bolted plate girder also, you can do like this also. Okay, so this is a 3D, the welded plate girder looks like. So this is our our plate girder. So they have put one more cover plate also to increase its section modulus, and then so you can see the stiffeners here. So these are the vertical stiffener. So you can see bearing stiffener, and these are all intermediate stiffeners here. Then the load carrying stiffener. So maybe the concentrated load is acting here. Then you have a horizontal stiffener also, which looks like this. So this is my horizontal. So this is provided for the LTB. Okay, the compression part of the your I section. Okay, and this is how a bolted plate girder. So it looks like this actual. Okay, so this is much more complex because the bolts and other things are there. Now, which is the best, bolted or welding?
Welding.
Now, why?
When we bolt, we lose some area.
Excellent. So cross-sectional area you follow, right? We are losing, you see, when you do the bolting. So that's why you go for the welded plate girder. Okay. And now coming to the modes of failure, say. So this is how a plate girder can fail. So these are the failure, like yielding of the tension flange. The tension flange, obviously it cannot buckle, so yielding will be there. Then the compression flange, say, it can buckle. Then vertical buckling into the web, the flange buckles into the web also. That is also another extra thing we will discuss also. This is another extra mode which comes into picture. Then flange local buckling of the flange, then lateral torsional buckling. So all these things comes into modes of failure. Then apart from that, say, as already I told you, since for plate girders D by T will be more than 67, the shear bucklings becomes a major the issue of the web. Okay, and this is the most important, the design criteria also, and that is what diagonal buckling also we said. Okay, and apart from this, you will have small like you see the bearings, the bearing failure under the concentrated load, like local failures also told you, right? Web crippling, web buckling, that also will have come into picture actual. Okay, so now to reduce this shear buckling, say, okay, the only way is depth to thickness ratio of the web, whatever we said here, or you provide the web stiffeners, the shear strength or something. And there is one more interesting thing here is this tension field, the action which extra comes into this buckling. See, generally for column, say, okay, so once the column has buckled, what happens? So it's strength. Once if you take a buckled column and you take a straight column, so whose strength will be more? Already the column has buckled like this. Now, the load carrying capacity of which one will be higher?
Straight column.
Straight column only. So already so columns, what happens is once they have buckled, say, they are useless actually. They will not be able to carry any more load, and that's all actually. But in plates, there is entirely different thing. So suppose if I take a plate, okay, something like this, and let us say this is a plate basically. So this plate is you see it is subjected to compression. Okay, in X direction. Okay, so let us say you take as a square plate or whatever. So A you followed, right? So this is the plates actually, and this is also A. Okay, the square plate. Now this square plate, say, it is subjected to buckling actually. So now once it buckles, say, what happens is if you look at the stress distribution basically. So this is a load, some P or whatever if you call this one. So if you try to see the stress distribution, say, in this plate, square plate. This portion, the stresses, I'm talking about the sigma x, then we have sigma y, so on both the sides. Okay, so plates, what happens is the stress distribution will be something like this. So this is a compressive stress will be there, so it decreases and goes like this. Now, so this way also you will have you see. So these are all compressive stress in x direction. Now when you see in the y direction, say, in the y direction, there is no load, there is nothing, because it is a plate, say, you will have sigma y also will come into picture. So when you are having a column, say, you had only one stress, that is sigma x was there, sigma y was not at all happening. But when it comes to a plate, you also will have other stress also which comes into picture, and this is a very, very peculiar the thing which comes into picture. So it will be something like this. Okay, so here it will be compression. The edges will be compression, but this side you will have the tension kind of thing you will see. So here compression, so both the side compression, but in middle portion you will see tension actually. So now what happens? This is a typical plate. So now whether this plate will buckle, after the the once it has buckled, say, so its post buckling strength will be more basically for the plates. So although the plate would have buckled, but it will carry still, you followed, right? The more load also. It is capable of carrying more load, you see, in the plates basically. The reason for this is, when you have a plate, because of its dimensions or whatever, you can do the exact derivation, So if you want to know the more derivations, it is available in, we will discuss this in great detail in stability course basically. Okay. So you have to write equation of equilibrium for a plates, and then you see, right? So these things automatically comes into picture. So the plates say, so because of this sigma y, which is coming on this side, and in the middle portion, say, although see generally, where for a column, say, which is the most dangerous place where it will buckle? No, top or bottom, or which place the buckling happens? Say. When it buckles, say, where the deflection will be more?
Midpoint.
At the midpoint. So here, now for a plate also, so now here we are talking about a plate basically. Okay, so now this is also under compression. Now when a plate is under compression, so how it will buckle? So this also you expect it will buckle, like this actually. The whole the plate you followed, right? It buckles is something like this. But here it is trying to buckle in the x direction. But what is happening sigma y at the middle portion?
Tension.
It is a tension. So in one direction it is trying to buckle, but in other direction, you see the tensile stresses comes, they try to pull it up actually. So due to this reason, say, so the plates have this post buckling strength, which is a very, very important. So plates, once they have buckled, say, it doesn't mean that they are useless. You followed it, they will have extra strength also. So you can use that itself, you see, in the design itself. Okay, so this is what they call as a tension field action. Okay, so the tension field action is basically, so if you have a plate, there are a wide column, say, okay, so although it is a compressive, but in sigma y also comes into picture actually, which doesn't come into picture for a column, that is a one-dimensional kind of thing. So because sigma y, there will be a tensile stresses, so they give additional strength or something, so it will carry more load after it has buckled also. So this tension field action also will come into picture. Okay, so this is a very, very important thing. Let us see this also. So this is what it happens. So whenever you are having a thing, say, I think I will show you a video. So you can see this how so this is a local web buckling. Yes. So please see, this is a very nice the video. Okay. So you can see this is a plate girder, say, you can see this is a plate girder. There are how many panels are there here? So you can see a long plate girder. So it has 3 panels, one panel here, another panel, and 3 panels. In the each panel, say, whether there are any stiffeners. Now, see, this is a plate girder actually, which he has taken here. So these are some aluminum thing he has done. It is not a steel, but of course, we can take it for this also. So it is subjected to this type of load actually, 4-point bending or whatever they say. So you have a load here, and these are the support, simply supported. Now let us see how it fails basically. And that is a lateral restraint has been provided. So why they have provided the lateral restraint? See, there have been lateral restraints are there. If you don't lateral restraint, what happens?
Lateral torsion buckling.
So lateral torsion buckling will come. So lateral torsion buckling is removed here. So this plate girder will not buckle in lateral torsion. It will buckle only in the shear. This one. Now see this one. So as you keep on, so this is the load he is applying. You can see here this place, and this place the load is being applied. So here, so you can see how you see these panels, how these panels buckles. See, as the load is keep on increasing. You can see this panel, panel that is to your left side panel. If you see how it is failing, how it is buckling.
45 degrees.
What type of buckling it is?
Shear buckling.
So this is a very, very, now apart from that, you see now what is happening to the flange also.
Local
now we'll show you it in a zoom mode. See this zoom mode here. See nicely that bands, shear bands, shear buckling mode, how it is failing. So this is where the load is getting applied. So you can see that 45 degrees, but you see the flange also. You followed. So this is what we call as, you know, if you want to plot all the graphs as a vertical load versus, you see, the end displacement and others, you know, so it goes to some point, then, you know, your buckling has started, you see, it, you know, comes down actually. So this is what we call as, you follow, right, the shear buckling or something, you know, in the thing itself. Okay. And now another mode also you can see. So this is also a very interesting thing. This also. So this is a flange buckling, he says, but here you see the shear buckle. Now you can see here. What's the difference between the previous one and this one? See in this panel, what are there?
Vertical stiffness.
Vertical stiffener. Longitudinal stiffener is there?
No, sir.
Why longitudinal stiffener is not required here?
We are looking at shear. No, we are trying to make it fail in longitudinal.
Yes, because already that person he has restrained. You can see these restraints A1, C1, D2, A2. So the beam is restrained. The blade girder is okay. So LTB is not possible. But here's here now you see the stiffeners actual. What is the advantage of the stiffeners? See how it buckles. So there is audio also. You can see there are stiffeners have been put up, but in the center portion there are no stiffeners actual because he wants to look at the flange buckling. But you see both the panels. So three panels are there, 470, 470, 470. So for first one, the last one say they have stiffeners. The middle one doesn't have any stiffener actually. See here now how it buckles. The load is keep on increasing. Now you see the center portion. You see the end panels also. See the end panels, left side and the right side panels, how they are failing. Can you see here what is happening in the left side and the right side panel? Now what's happened, how it is failing in the left side, this panel and this panel. So I think he zooms also. Now you can see the middle portion also you see. So here the flange, you can see the top flange or whatever, and he has also shown the top view, then the side view. So now this is for zoom thing. So now you see this left side panel also. Now how it is buckling.
Just like the earlier case.
This same as the
earlier case without the stiffness.
No, earlier case without the stiffener, you had seen only one band, right?
Yes, sir.
But now how many bands are there? You can see 45 degrees. How many are there between one stiffener to another stiffener? One stiffener to another stiffener. You can see one band here, one band here, one band here. You can see here. So there are so many bands have been formed. So what does it tells you? So what is the advantage of putting stiffener? Now that is a buckling is going to happen in which modes?
Multiple modes,
multiple. So this one. So this is one thing that is advantage stiffener. Now if you see the center portion also, so which he has nicely shown, right? The flange buckling actually. Now here if you see this one, so how the flange is buckling? So this is a flange, the center portion. So how it is buckling the flange?
Sir, I think it is warping.
Now warping, that is a wavy nature actually. Excellent. Whatever you told is perfectly fine. So flange also you will see this type of a wavy, you know, nature also. Okay. So this is how. So now here also when you see the shear buckling, say you are having 45 degrees bands also, that is perfectly fine. You look at the flange also. What is happening to the flange? Vertical stiffeners are the flanges also. You are seeing some type of a
local buckling.
Local buckling of the flange or some type of a wavy nature you followed, right? You are seeing in the flange also. So these how the most important failures you see for the buckling actual. So if you don't put stiffeners, what happens? So if you put stiffener, say, if there are no stiffener means you follow, right, the shear buckling will occur. Now the idea is when you put the stiffeners, you will see these type of bands. You have already seen, right? So when there is a concentrated load and this one, right? So when you're having the load, so what happens is diagonal. So the what happens is, so this you can, it becomes like a truss kind of thing. So when there is a load, say, so the compression will be carried by the stiffeners, the compressive load, and this portion, say, that is a diagonal thing. Automatically, because it has exceeded, it cannot carry this one. So the tension will be carried by this diagonal portion. You follow? So the compression will be carried by the stiffeners itself. So this is what we call as a tension field actually. So this is the tension field we say, which you are seeing in the stiffeners. So tension is carried by this, and this one is carried by the stiffeners itself. So this is what we call as a tension field. So this automatically forms in the when you see the failures, you can clearly see that 45 degrees the angle itself. So so these are the most important failure actually. Okay, so the most important failures are, of course, there are local problems will be there, like flange local buckling, LTB. Of course, LTB can be avoided by putting the restraints or by putting a stiffener or whatever. Then the shear buckling is the most important failure in our thing itself. So and the most important thing you have to understand here is what is the most important thing for a plate, say, once it has buckled, it will still carry
more load. I mean,
more load, because why it carries more load? If somebody asks you,
potential field action.
so tension field action is fine. One side sigma x will be compressive stress, but other side what happens, you will have sigma y, and the center it will give extra the tension. You of course the derivation is available. I will share you one of the videos, okay, which I shared you for the beams, one stability course actually. Okay, so you can see the derivation, you will understand the sigma x and sigma y, all the post buckling strength. Okay, the tension field action also comes into picture actually. And now let us see the design. How do we do the design of a plate girder actually? So now in the plate girder, see when the beams, what was our design variable in the beams, say, what was the design variable?
Section modulus.
Section modulus was a design variable, and we didn't do anything. But when it comes to plate girder, section modulus is in whose hand? You don't have fixed, like we used to see the steel tables, and then we used to pick the section modulus. But when it comes to a plate girder, say, section modulus, what is the section modulus of a plate girder? It is in whose hand? It is a fixed value, or what is it? You can what is that you have to do for section modulus?
It is a built-up section, so we can
it is a
control
built-up, so it is in your hand actually. You have to decide. You follow it based on economy or whatever. So the depth of the plate girder, thickness of the web, and all other things, they are all that is in our hand actually. Okay, so we can do whatever we like. So generally what we do is, because of economy, because of all other things, we do like this. So if the area of flange, say, if BF is the breadth of the flange, TF is the thickness of the flange, say, so this gives the area of the flange. This is the area of the web, depth multiplied by TW. So the total area is given by two flanges, basically top flange, bottom flange, plus your this web area. Now if I define the parameters, this is slenderness ratio, that is a D by TW. Okay, for this one, and if I define some capital K, which is nothing but the area ratio of the web area to the total area of the section itself. Okay, so then you can write D is K times TW, D square is this one, and you can do some small algebra actual. And the plastic section modulus, say, you can add your flange thing plus the web thing, and you write all those things to say. So finally you can write in terms of some a to the power of 3 by 2 into C, where C is your this parameter. So it depends on the slenderness ratio and the capital K, which is the ratio of the areas. That's a proportioning basically. Okay, the area of web to the area. Now if you want to increase the section modulus, say, what is that you have to do? So section modulus depends on which things? Area is constant. So given a area, so given the area is fixed, so now your section modulus depends on which things? It depends on which. So C, that is a constant C. Okay, so now as already I told you, in plate girder we want to maximize this ZP actually. Okay, so we will differentiate this with respect to K. K is fixed. The small k is slenderness ratio, but capital K is, it is just about proportion actually. How much area should be in the web, how much area should be in the flange actual. So we differentiate this with respect to C. So finally K turns out to be 2/3. So what is the most important thing? So if I have area is a total area, say how much area should be in the web? So K is a 2/3 and K is nothing but AW by A. You followed, AW by A. So the way in the web, how much area should be? 2/3 area should be in the web and 1/3 area should be in the remaining in the flange actual. So this is like, you see, how we can decide actual. Okay, so now this is a plastic section modulus. If you take 2/3 and 1/3 say, so this is a section modulus, if you put 2/3 and this one, and from this approximate, so we can find out what should be the thickness of the web approximately. Then we can also find out the depth of the web also. Okay, from this expression, that is proportioning 2/3 and proportioning this itself actually. So these are some, you can estimate some, like you see, guidelines actual. What should be the depth and the thickness of the plate girder actually. Okay, now apart from generally in practice, what we do is the depth of the plate girder, say you can get from this formula, from this itself, it is some 10 to 20% actual of the optimal, whatever economical depth equation 13.7. So generally, you see, we take 15% reduction, say, so this becomes 0.85 times 1.26. So 1.26 comes from that minimization, and then you can take like this, and the bending capacity. So ZP plastic section modulus is mu by Fy into gamma m naught. All these things which comes from the beam, and the thickness of the web, say you can pick up from this formula, assuming 15% reduction. So these are the two important formulas which we have to use to find out depth and thickness of the web packet. It's very simple. For a given area, say you have to decide how much area should be in the web, how much area should be in the flange. So optimum comes out to be 2/3 and 1/3 kind of thing itself. Okay. So anyways, I will stop here. So we will continue in our next class. Okay. Now before we close, right? See, one important thing is, you see, our